we're so far removed from our actual selves. We're so influenced by like what we can have and what we can be and the things we can have access to from a young age, right? The money, the cars, the fame. We're so influenced by it because the people that we prop up in our society today are the people with that platform and the people with that power. We're not taught to value the self, to value like things outside of social constructs like power and platform, right? I think at some point we need to reframe it and say we need to have value within ourselves and within like the earth, like our true energy source, which at the end of the day is within all of us. When we recenter and we center like our thoughts and our minds and our soul and our body around like just your inner energy source, you begin to reveal to yourself the things that you truly believe are right and the things that you truly like can stand for and stand behind.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for watching Just F and Go podcast with me, Charlie Villar, and Sam Jimenez. Today we're going to be talking about some crazy stuff that's been happening throughout the week and other topics that have been on our mind. And I'm pretty sure it's on everybody's mind, and we just need to kind of vent it out, talk about it, and see how we feel about it. Sam, what's going on with you, my man?
Living life, living a beautiful life as always. It's been a good week. Got a lot of refreshing. Got a long hike in, actually a lot longer than I imagined it was going to be a few days ago. So feeling good, feeling refreshed, feeling ready to rock.
Dope, brother. Yeah, I got to go on a little made a picnic. Really, it was like a picnic in like the backyard of my lady's parents' backyard. Like not in their backyard, but their backyard has a backyard. Oh shit. But yeah, so it's been pretty cool. So just kind of kicking back.
You got a backyard with a backyard. They got a backyard with a backyard.
Who is it? Young
I don't
Jeezy.
know
I
what
was like,
kinda-
my room's got room in it. It's like, that's a closet, bro. Let's talk about the I mean, we can't really get around this because it was such a insane visual and thing that happened with Beirut. And I mean, that's just with everything that's going on right now with the pandemic and economic, downfalls for certain things, that along with an explosion of catastrophic levels like that, I don't even know.
Yeah, I think as we've talked about it, it's I think it's hard in the Western world to like wrap your head around like, the catastrophic like effect of what this means for Lebanese people. I saw a couple graphics online, sent them to our group chat with like what the damage would have been like in New York and London, right? So it's extremely like it's uh it's a very sad moment. I know we both wanted to kind of start with it just to express condolences. I think the last I checked numbers were like over a hundred dead, over I think 5,000 or 8,000, over 5,000 injured, and then 300,000 people left homeless after the blast, which is um, very unfortunate thing. So for me, like the biggest thing is just condolences to everybody who's lost someone or who's lost like all of their possessions and belongings during this whole thing.
Yeah, possessions, belongings, and sense of security all around, right? Sense of security, whether it's like shelter, how am I going to get my food, but also like what is going on around me. I can't imagine the mental stress that you're going through at this moment. Just everything just seems to be crumbling around you if you've been going through that. And I hope we are an international show now, but I hope that if there happens to be anybody that does listen to the podcast over there, or someone that knows someone out there, that they feel that they can talk to someone or reach out to other people to kind of help out. Like, I honestly, man, if there was a way that I knew that I can help, I would love to do that. There's just so much right now that you're like, do you donate to this organization? Do you donate to that organization? Does it actually go to those people? I hope that we find a way that with all the technology that we have, that we are able to find a way to directly affect people in need.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, they're already going through the impact of fighting off the current coronavirus pandemic. Also, I believe people like a lot of Lebanese people in Lebanon have been protesting against like corruption in the government over the course of pretty much like the whole last year. A lot of just economic you know downturn and turmoil. And I think the hardest part, and like not the hardest part, I think loss of life is always like the hardest thing to deal with. But for the country and the people as a whole that did survive, and now have to rebuild it, it's like this happened at the port, right? And like Beirut is a port city, and Lebanon imports. I read Lebanon imports 80% of like all consumed goods, um, into their country. So anything that the country does consume, 80% of it is imported. And to lose basically your port in your major city, I think the stat I read was at 60% of all imported goods were imported into the port of Beirut. And now, with the devastation of losing that port, there's going to be a lot of further economic turmoil, and just people have lost access to goods and food. And it's I think you're right. With a lot of information out there, sometimes it's hard to sift through and find like the correct places to donate your whatever resources you may have to people over there. So you know it's a tough one right now.
So speaking on that, on information and just the abundance of it, also going to the polarization of like sensationalizing news. I think that's one thing that we wanted to talk about today too. Is just how when you watch things on the news or you have different arguments going on, sometimes they're pitted against each other when they have nothing to do with each other. Sometimes there's a lot of clickbait that happens that makes you, and sometimes with the clickbait, you don't even read the entire thing. Sometimes you don't even click on the article anymore. You just go off the headline and you're like, oh, shit. Yeah, and that's it, and you keep it going. I've been guilty of that before in the past, um, and it caused a lot of anxiety in me until I said, well, what actually happened? And then I start reading it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, well, that makes sense, or that doesn't make sense, or that's an opinion. Um, what are your thoughts on that so far?
I think it's you see it with damn near all topics in popular culture or all like social issues, right? I think even in the case of like Lebanon and Beirut right now, there are people like, oh, but there are multiple different sides of like that thing, right? Of like the polarization of it. I've seen one crowd that's like, oh, white people cared about like when the like Notre Dame was burning, but like you don't care about Lebanon, right? So you only care when it's centered around whiteness, or a Eurocentric place or a European place or a Western place, right? Then you have another side that's like, how can you care so much about what's going on in Beirut, but you don't care about like veterans here? And it's like people are constantly putting together like horrible things, like horrible circumstances, and like these very sad things that we all should care about as humans, and pit them against each other as a way of like taking a political stance, right? And I think nothing improves until we can get past that, where it's like it's possible for all humans to care about humans, or to care about people that are going through horrific things in their life at these moments. It's possible for me to care about you know mental health for veterans in this country, while also caring about like the people that have lost homes and lives in Beirut. And we're just at a place as society where it's like, no, you can only care about like one thing, or else you're a Republican, or else you're, neoliberal, or else you're whatever other, political party or ideal or values you hold in this country. I just think there's no nuance in that conversation. You don't allow room for nuance. And at the end of the day, it strips us of our humanity in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's definitely that. I feel like I feel like we do somewhat. I mean, this is just me thinking out loud as usual. There's a little bit of a compartmentalizing that you have to do in the sense that it's not impossible for you to think or to care and have empathy for multiple things at once, but I feel like sometimes um, they're like you were saying they're pitted against each other. Like you can't care about like caring about one means you're anti the other one, and that's not the case. You can say, yo, yes, these things are super important to me, and then hey, guess what, life happens and this thing is also happening right now, and it doesn't mean that I need to abandon that and abandon this. It does mean that you can focus your energy into this, and then at that same day say, all right, how do we also focus our energy into that? It doesn't mean like your whole life has to be dedicated to that the entire time. You have to be able to function while doing both, but it doesn't mean that they're going against each other, or they shouldn't. And I think that kind of goes for me with the idea. Here, I'm gonna dive into this one real quick, just real quick. The idea of gun control, right? Those topics of gun control. That for me goes with clickbait. That goes with reading the headlines, and that goes with thinking that you can only be one way about it. And I think when I've talked to people both that have guns and then myself who wants a gun but is also kind of weary about having a gun, I feel like you could be pro gun and at the same time be pro gun control. Those topics aren't, it's not like they're saying, yo, no guns, right? When you read some of the things that they're talking about, I think they think more rules, more difficulty for people to have guns. And to me, that feels like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. If I am a gun owner, I want to be able to own my gun and feel safe about it. And that there's crazy people, not crazy people, but there's people out there that are a little bit more aggressive or violent, or maybe have some sort of, I don't know, something that makes them a threat while having a gun. But it doesn't mean that I want people to not be able to have guns. It just means that, yo, I just want a little bit more of a difficulty so that they're not just out on the streets. And I think that sometimes we just think gun control, because of the title, we're like, oh, you must be against guns, or,
Yeah,
that.
a lot of the way it ends up playing out in the media and on social media as well is like you're either pro gun or anti gun, right? There's no like middle ground. Like you're either with us or against us. And again, like I think it all comes down to like nuance and like the ability to have nuanced thoughts about things. The ability to say like I want to have this thing, but I realize that we need change around this thing, right? I think that is like I think at the end of the day, for me, what it comes down to is like media, right? Is like the way media portrays it all, and then the people that only consume that type of media, and so then their thought processes reflect that, right? I do think that there's a good amount of people, and maybe even like a silent majority, who do believe in like the nuanced conversation and like the ability to hold two opposing thoughts at the same time but understand them and be empathetic to them. I think you hit it on the head when you talked about empathy. We can be empathetic to multiple situations at the same time. It doesn't have to exist in one world or the other. It doesn't have to, they don't have to independently exist apart from each other, so I think a big part of it is just the overconsumption of sensationalized media and the way that these things are sensationalized in what we consume every day. But also, like, I think we have to understand, we have to come to an understanding, in, especially in this country, not to say that it doesn't exist elsewhere in the world, but in this country, we have a two-party political system. And within that two-party political system, everything gets used as a weapon against the other party. And the only way I think for those political parties to, that the only way that I think they think about it is that we have to make it look like our opponent is against this thing so we can please our constituents, so that they say, okay, I'm a Democrat because I believe in these bullet point 5 to 10 things, and all Democrats believe in that, right? And then the Democrats will paint it as like the Republicans want to take away all of these 5 to 10 things, and then the Republicans play that same thing and to please their constituents. And at the end of the day, like I think there aren't enough people in this country that truly do talk about like the evils that two-party political system create within our world, and how they pit us against each other in this very, very unhealthy way.
Straight up, dude. There was a couple of things you talked about there that, like, I totally agree. I think, instead of, for example, even with this election year that's coming up, right? You have these whole times it's been Democrats fighting against Trump, not necessarily, at least right now, right? It's how do we beat Trump, as opposed to what are we going to do? And there has been obviously candidates that have said this is what we do, this is what we're going to do, but that hasn't really won in the polls or whatever. Like, what people want to see is how do you beat this guy, and that seems to be what's selling on the news, not necessarily what the majority of the world or the nation wants, but it's more what is selling on the news to keep it going. My boy said that he stopped watching CNN because that's like a Trump thing. It's like they talk more about Trump than anything that's actually happening. And so even though they're against him or whatever, they're making all their shit from him. So I'm like, that's a great point. Like, it's really not spreading any building. It's just trying to destroy something and building themselves up from that. So
Just like we talked about last week. As you were saying that, I was thinking about it. Like, just as you talked about last week, I think when it comes to this current election year and this current election cycle, I think so much of like the Democrats priority has been, how do we defeat Trump, how do we tear down Trump, how do we like do all of these things, instead of figuring out like, let me appeal to the things that our constituents actually want, right? How do, not only for like Democrats, right? Because I think there's a lot of people within the Democratic Party that just care about beating Trump, right? Not even saying like the politicians involved, but also like the constituents. I think a lot of constituents only care like, as long as we beat Trump, nothing else matters, right? Instead of like, and then there's a large middle ground. There's a very, very large middle ground in this country right now that would rather have a politician appeal to the things that they actually want and that they actually care about, instead of the politician just constantly talking about Trump. And I think like, if the Democrats truly wanted to, like, the desire is truly to defeat Trump, or to, is the desire to defeat Trump, or to do what's best for the country,
right,
to do what's best for the people of the country, right? And I think right now there are so many people that are just like, we just want to beat Trump.
yeah,
And once
and
that
that's super
happens, the
dangerous.
country's going to fix itself. And I'm like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, no, that's super dangerous, and I think a lot of Americans feel that way, where they have their super villain, and they think that once they beat the super villain, that's it. But I'm like, have you not watched the Avengers or any superhero movie? They're just another one that comes right after that. You just have to wait for it, or you don't even know it's hidden. It's your own partner or something like that. So, yeah, and I think part of the problem is that we're not having conversations because those things are so polarized. You're either with me or against me. To even question your own people would be like, oh, you must be on the other side. And I think that's why we're having a lot of problems, even with us, when we want to talk about what are we going to talk about this topic, what these topics are. It gets a little scary to be like, do I want to talk about that? Because like, that might be a little bit too far out. What if people don't really like that? And we start tiptoeing, and I know that none of us.
Because when Charlie's like, yeah, the Earth is flat, and Mikey and I are like, I don't know about that one.
And I'm like, no, just bear with me. Wait, get a coin, spin it.
I'm like, you got to watch this YouTube video. I'm telling you, the Earth is flat. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. What's funny that you say that is that, well, one, we haven't had that conversation at all here, by the way. But I have had that conversation with friends, not about Earth being flat, but just like like other conspiracy theories or things like that. And I know that some of my really, really close friends see me as someone who's like, curious about different things and tackling different perspectives. But I also do know that when I do hit them up on these topics, I'm not sending you this to say that this is what I subscribe to and this is what I buy into, but more like, hey, let's talk about this idea. What do you guys think about these topics? But I know that I then get painted with the paintbrush of like, this guy's a little crazy. He's going down the YouTube rabbit hole. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A tinfoil hat on. I don't know. Let me something. Do you believe that you're a free thinker? And if you do believe that you're a free thinker, or if you don't, what do you think? What does that term even mean to you, right? What does the term free thinker even mean to you?
I've realized that I am easily influenced by my environment, and it sounds like a weak thing to say, right? because people are so fickle and everything else. But I recognize that you give me information, you follow with facts and a good convincing or with conviction, and you're telling me that this is what's going on, this is what's going on. I'm not going to say, wow, that is what's going on. I'd say, okay, you got a fair point. I'll start considering and thinking about that, you know. But I'm not going to be like, no, unless I know that there's facts against certain topics. And, you know, so I want to say I'm a free thinker in the idea that I am malleable and understanding different topics or being able to dive into different topics. But I do know that as who I am as a human, I can be persuaded into certain things depending on the information that I'm given. So I don't know. I have an issue with certain, besides math, and even until I start, advancing more in the knowledge that I have on that language of math. I feel like, I mean, facts can be factual off of like the sample size of experiences that people have had with these rules, until something happens that changes that, and that's no longer a fact, right? And we've seen in textbooks and in history books in the past that people had thought a certain way for a very long time, and it was a fact until it wasn't. And I mean, when we live in a world, in a universe where our reality is our reality on this planet, it doesn't mean that that is the reality for the entire universe. Then it's kind of hard for me to be like, this is it. There's no other way around it, except for maybe math, and even that sometimes.
No, I feel that. I don't know. It's a question that like I've been thinking about lately, because I consider myself to be fairly like free thinking. But I think even what you talk about is like free in thought, like the ability to sit there and listen to somebody else who may not have um who may not believe the same way that you do, but has different information than you do. Like the ability to sit there and listen, I think to me is like a level of like being free thinking, right? I think listening in general is like a very like free thinking quality to have, because a lot of times you'll run into people who would rather speak than listen, and they may speak very powerfully, and may be filled with conviction, and may be able to convince a whole lot of people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always correct, right? Like charisma doesn't equal like I don't know, correctness. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's just something I've been thinking about, and like as I expand into like trying to meditate more, and spend more time in like quietness and stillness, I think it keeps coming back to me like, what does it truly mean to be free thinking? Can you ever be free, like fully free thinking, when you're consuming more information that your brain can actually like process in a single moment or a single day or in a single week, right? I think for me, like in order to truly be free thinking, what I keep coming back to is like you have to give your mind, your brain space and time to process the information that you take in. Because I'm gonna get real spiritual for a second. I think that within all of us, we have the answers. We have all the answers that we can ever really need within us. It's just a matter of how do you tap into that. Like, and I don't think you can truly tap into that when all that you do is consume information. I think our world, with a phone and a laptop, whatever it is, like we have more information at the like tips of our fingers than anybody in the history of time. And so what do we do with that? You can choose to consume and consume and consume and consume, but do you truly process all of that information unless you sit with it and allow your brain to process it? I don't know. I guess that's today's hippie thought for the day.
I think that's real, dude. I think because prior to reading Stamped from the Beginning, I was just not racist, right? That was just my label on myself. I'm not racist. And but then when I read the book and I realized some of the origins after reading his perspective based on what has happened, and the information that he's gotten on the origins of racist ideas, and then how that you not only cannot be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to fight towards that equity in people. I realize that I have to take time with myself, like you're saying, meditating. But I also have to know the origins of where did my programming come from, you know? And then once I know where my programming came from, who wrote that programming, and what their intention was with that programming, then I need to fucking like isolate for a bit and just be like, all right, what has happened in my life? How have I moved forward with my life with that programming, and where do I want to go? You know? So I do agree with you that we all have this kind of like a information in yourself, and that we all kind of have the answers to ourselves, and that we need to take a step back. But I also think we need to be intelligent and wise into the selection of information that we choose to get before we go and meditate, just to kind of like, all right, who are you, what am I, what started this, so
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, I think I think that with all of that, what we see nowadays, like again, like we have so much information at the tips of our fingers, right? Social media plays a huge part in that. And I think just like you were saying, like you have to be able to kind of filter the information that you do take in, or at least look at that in with an unbiased view. Is like, where is this information coming from? Who influenced the person that put out this information? What is their background? And like, how do I can I look at this information solely as information, or do I have to process it in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think social media makes that really difficult. And this week was, you know, I think the first time in the history of Donald Trump's social media, what do I want to call it? Social media campaign and power movement that he experienced some censorship as Facebook and Twitter moved uh, posts from Donald Trump that were claiming, certain statistics about coronavirus's impact on children and why schools should be reopened. Um, and so I think it's an interesting time to be talking about like information and how do we process it, because the reality is that there's so much information out there, and no matter what side you're on, that a lot of that, I don't know about a lot, but a good amount of that information is going to be incorrect, right? When there's that much information out there, you have to realize that some of it isn't going to be the most correct. And how do you filter through that? How do you sift through that and find the reality behind a lot of these things? What are your thoughts on our current president's censorship, or just the use of social media as your place for information?
Oh man, so I feel like with let me go with the place of information first on being social media. I think it's a pretty great way to get information because you don't have to wait for a publisher, you don't have to wait for anything else. So anyone who has information in their background of what they do, they're able to put it out there, right? Like, let's say my area of quote unquote expertise with hair, I can put tips on how to do your own hair, how to cut hair, how to do this and that. I can do that. And anybody that wants to learn can learn it from social media, YouTube, or something else. But uh, it also just leaves very little room for fact checking. You know what I mean? To fact check everything that's going on. So you can get the wrong information from social media for sure. So I do think it's great, but I do think that there needs to be uh, almost like a separate site. Like if you're going to say Facebook, right? And Facebook is where a lot of people get their information, or Twitter, Instagram. Have like hey, these are the news. You want to hear about the news? This is the news category in Facebook. You want to hear about opinions? This is the opinion category on Facebook, or something else. I literally just thought about that right now. I think it's a genius idea if I do say so myself. But
Well, I think you're right in a lot of ways, because right, like if we look back at like the antiquated newspaper system, like you had those things, you had opinion columns, and you had like the front page news, and you had like the sports section, and the I don't know, and the auto section, and the cartoons, right? So you know where you need to go for whatever information you want to be exposed to. And right now it's just currently hard to figure that out on social media or on the internet in general. Just like there's so much out there, man. There's so much out there. President Trump said, if you look at children, children are almost, and I would almost say definitely. Oh wait. If sometimes
He's
reading is sometimes reading is like the words that he says. I'm like, how do you even speak this way? But I guess
67% of the time, it works every time.
if you look at children, children are almost, and I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease. I don't even know what that means. Like,
yeah.
how do you even take that and like, I don't know.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
that's a great political way of just talking, right? Like, just go and hit every topic on there. I mean, so two things on that. On the censorship of Trump, I don't see him as being censored as Trump the individual, because you quit being an individual when you become the president, right? And so you can't have an opinion as a president. You have to have a fact as a president, because you are representing something with great ethos that people are looking to you for confidence, because you are the leader of the country, right? Of one of the most powerful countries on the planet. So you can't have little cute opinions on these topics. I'm sorry, bro. You gave that up when you got elected. And I think it's important that Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms can censor or at least fact check when there's someone with high ethos like that putting fake shit out there. As for individuals, if it's like a random citizen with not as much ethos as a president of the United States, or isn't being co-signed by the president of the United States, then I think go ahead and say what you want to say, bro. It's up to people to make their opinion on whatever they want to side with you, and you have a negative view on things, and that's on them, that's freedom of speech. But I don't have a problem with political entities being checked and saying, yo, what you're saying is wrong. I feel like that's our duty as citizens, to check the government when they're crossing the line. And in this situation, I think he's putting lives in danger by saying things that are inaccurate. Now, what I read on whatever he meant by almost definitely immune, almost, like I was doing the math on the numbers of how many kids, I think it's globally, have been affected by or infected by coronavirus, and it was like 240,000, and of those it's 300, and of those 300 that develop another disease from that, an inflammatory disease, and of those 300, 6 of them have passed away, right? So it's a small percentage in that scale that we know of that have gotten tested, that have been documented as tested. So I guess, like, you can't say it cures it or that it's unaffected because of that, right? It's a very small percentage. But when you say that they're, immune to this shit, that's false. That's incorrect. And they can still transfer that to other people and people that are affected by this thing. So you can't say any of that.
Yeah, that they're almost definitely, almost kind of definitely, almost immune. It's like,
yeah, because there's people out there that will buy into that and be like, "Oh, kids, go
you're
out,
almost
come back
definitely
in."
Almost immune. I just think, I don't know. I mean, to me, censorship in general, like I have a hard time with, because to me, it's always like, you know, when it comes to censoring people's opinions and thoughts, it's always hard for me to like wrap my head around, where does it end and where does it stop, and how do we decide what is incorrect as an opinion, right? Because I think in general there's censorship going on social media when it comes to people's opinions, right? And it's difficult to wrap my head around sometimes, like, where does it end? Because if we begin to censor people's opinions now, what does it look like in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years? And are we allowed to share any opinions on social media? I know that maybe thinking about it as like, extremely like dramatic or sensationalized, but it's something that I don't know if I like have the correct answer in my head. And sometimes when I don't have the correct answer in my head, I don't even want to talk about like whether it's right or wrong, because to me, I'm like, I don't even know. And I think it, something we've seen on social media over the course of the last week is like the development of like hashtag save the children, right? And I know there are people that have expressed like that, like their posts when it comes to like saving the children and the topic of like pedophilia and um, like large scale sex rings and child sex rings. I know a lot of people have felt like they've been censored when they try to put information out there, right? And so to me, I'm like, damn, man, like I don't know where it ends. And it's, going back to something we were talking about earlier. It's like oftentimes these things are hyper politicized, and it's like, oh, because you care about saving the children, it doesn't, it means that you don't care about Black lives because you view things as one way or and I view them as a different way. I know we've both had like concerns about even speaking about this topic because it's crazy. It's crazy when you look into all of it, and it's crazy when you start to read some of the some of the documentation that is out there about a lot of these things when it comes to like these larger child sex rings that Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein Island had going on, Ghislaine Maxwell had going on or was contributing to, and the amount of like child abuse and pedophilia that happens at high levels, not just within the government, but within like different aspects of our everyday life here within like the entertainment industry, right? Um, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing, and I think that people need to come to the realization that this is a real thing that is happening, and it deserves attention. And just because you talk about that doesn't mean that like you think that other things don't exist, right? It's a heavy one. It's a heavy one. What do you think?
Damn. Yeah, man. I feel like that shit is so heavy. It is hard to talk about for me for two different things. Well, one, not knowing all the facts, right? Not wanting to continue to spread misinformation if there is misinformation in there, because I'm pretty sure there will be, right? Or just information that we don't know about yet, hasn't been verified yet, you know. So the way that I kind of handle that is, okay, I know that there's human trafficking happening. I know that there's human trafficking of children happening. I know that it's a global issue and it's a male issue, number one. And obviously females as well, right? Like it's a human issue that we're having. But it seems like it's predominantly driven by males. And so there's also people that have been mentioned in documents, not just hearsay, right? There's a lot of people that are mentioned in hearsay of saying, oh, this person, that person, this person, that person. And I mean, until there's proof, I can't be like, yep, that person too, that person too. But I do know that if they're tied in, oh man, how did you not see that happening? Or, whatever. So I take it like people got into power by doing certain things. Um, people stay in power by doing certain things. And I think there's a lot of people in power that are capable of doing some heinous ass shit. I don't know which ones did. I don't know which ones turned a blind eye to it, but they did it. And I don't think that. I mean, I'll do this. I'll take the hashtags out. I'll take the other stuff out. You know what I mean? The things that might be too leaning to one way or another way when it comes to politics. But I will say, give me the meat of it. Like, what is the topic? The topic is sex trafficking, human trafficking. Like, okay, are you against that? Absolutely. So let's go and fight that. Let's go and tackle that. Who was it? Like Malcolm, right? Who said, I'm for truth no matter who says it, right? That's what I'm for. Yo, did you do something that was foul? All right, I ain't fucking with you. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make sure that get the consequences for this situation. Um, but yeah, I mean, because those things become politicized too, right? Now it's like, oh, it's Hillary Clinton and the Clintons, or no, it's Trump. It's this. It's man, if it's both of them, I don't care. You know what I mean? If it's somebody else that I look up to, I don't care, bro. I guess I don't look up to you anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is like realizing that sometimes what you think isn't actually what you know, and sometimes the people that you think are good people and quality people, may not necessarily be so, or may or have done things that may not necessarily be that, right? And in regards to like human trafficking and like pedophilia and stuff like that, to me, like, you can make a lot of mistakes in this world. You can do a lot of things that I think you can be forgiven for. You can, deserve redemption for, or be able to redeem yourself for. Not necessarily deserve, but be able to redeem yourself and to come back from. Human trafficking, pedophilia. I don't know about that one, man. It's not, to me. It's like I draw the line somewhere, and I'll even say this, man. I think, and like I'm 100% stand behind this. I think you come back from being a racist. You can redeem yourself from being a racist. You don't have to always hold those ideals, right? Um, but pedophilia, like, that's where I draw the line. And so this whole thing, and even before like being a father, like, I don't know, man. It's when you read a lot of like the details of it's horrifying. It's horrifying, and it is leaves me speechless sometimes, like right now. But
Yeah. And the thing that sucks is that these things have been happening for a long time. You know what I mean? In the entertainment industry and a lot of things. And we've known about it before Epstein. It's not like we didn't, it's not like this was unheard of before that. You hear about the child stars a long time ago. You hear about Charlie Chaplin. You hear about this and that. Shit, you hear about it even in shit where, what was it? Like some VH1 things where Usher or Lil Wayne lost their virginity super young and all that. It isn't just happening to women. It's not about that. It's about children that don't have a voice, don't have any representation, don't have any way to defend themselves, and are being manipulated to do something that they have no conscience on. You know what I mean? What's going on? So that's taking advantage of an innocent person. And when you're exploiting somebody innocent like that and taking advantage of them, and then not even, I mean, I don't even know what happens afterwards. So they just fucking leave them out. You know what I mean? Like nothing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I feel like this is one of the few times like we're both kind of left in like what do you even say to it? What do you even? And I think when you were talking about like, we know this stuff has been going on, I look at it as like, this deserves this deserves to be talked about. Like, we need to talk about this thing, right? Like, we need to figure out how the fuck we can combat this, right? Because I don't know, what was it, a year ago, a year and a half ago, when maybe 2 years ago, it had to be like a year ago, when the R. Kelly docu series dropped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody talked about it, man. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
got behind it. It was like, R. Kelly's canceled. R. Kelly needs to be canceled. R.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, like, it got all the attention in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Especially amongst like black and brown communities. But this one, which is even like, not to minimize like any experience, right? Not to minimize any experience, but this is like large scale shit.
Yeah.
And it's going, it's not necessarily being swept under the rug, but it's going unnoticed by a lot of people. And I think even especially within like black and brown communities, people aren't even like aware of some of these things.
Or they're so aware of it, of this shit just being regular fucking life now, where
True.
it's like these things we've been ringing the alarms on these things. Our kids have gone missing and no one fucking looks for them. I know when I lived in Juarez, that was back in 2007. There was about 300 women killed in like a year or so. And we just kept on wondering, like, what is happening to all these women? Where are these mass graves coming from? Like, who's doing this? And we had different ideas. It was this military branch, or it was this person. There was some dude from. There was even rumors of some dude from Egypt. All these things. And as I'm seeing that, like, Epstein had a spot in New Mexico, and from what I hear too, the former president of Mexico's, like, three former presidents of Mexico, their son was involved with Epstein, a couple things. I'm like, oh, It could have easily been going because he got caught up for like sex trafficking in 2008, and that was in
Yeah.
2007 when this shit was happening. So I'm like, there could have easily been these whole things happening everywhere. It's not like people didn't know about it, but
Yeah.
people were being silenced. And I think the reason. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
I think that why it was able to happen for so long and why people didn't talk about it as much is because it was happening from people in power and people in power that people without power wanted to get into with, right? So you have the Harvey Weinsteins, you have the Charlie Chaplins, you have all those people that I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I think if you're an impressionable young person and you're trying to get your foot in the door, they tell you, when you're growing up, hey, there's going to be some things you're going to have to do, you know what I mean, to get up in here. And you might not agree with it, but you're probably like, oh shit, this is what everybody's doing, and I got to do this to get on. I think a lot of people fell victim to that. No excuse for it, but I think that is probably what happens. Same thing when it comes to politics. Same thing when it comes to businesses. Peer pressure, I guess. I just don't know how much of a peer pressure you have to go through in order to fucking throw away all your values, all your morals, and all your shit.
Sell your soul, man. Some people will sell it, but I think what happens, honestly, I think the way that it happens is that I'm gonna get real spiritual and hippie again here. I think what happens is that we're so far removed from our actual selves as humans. We're so far removed from like understanding ourselves as like mind, body, and soul, right? We're so influenced by like what we can have and what we can be and the things we can have access to from a young age, right? The money, the cars, the fame, the whatever it is, right? The social standing. We're so influenced by it because the people that we prop up in our society today are the people with that platform and the people with that power, that we lose ourselves, right? We're not taught to value the self, to value like things outside of social constructs like power and platform, right? I think at some point we need to reframe it and say we need to have value within ourselves and within like the earth and nature and being connected to like, damn, I'm getting hell hippie, like our
Hey,
true
keep it
energy
going. Keep
source,
it going.
like our true energy source, which at the end of the day is within all of us. And when we center, like when we recenter and we center like our thoughts and our minds and our soul and our body around like just your inner energy source, you begin to reveal to yourself the things that you truly believe are right and the things that you truly like can stand for and stand behind. And we just as a society are so far removed from that. We don't teach it. We don't teach focus. Um, we don't teach like we don't teach meditation. We don't teach um empathy, so that everything is influenced by the outside world. So then when everything is influenced by the outside world, you become so easily influenced because you're so far removed from yourself. You don't even know yourself. You don't know your own thoughts and your own mind because you haven't spent enough time with it. And I think I don't know if there's a way to prevent it. It's just teaching young people to not desire the outside world, right? Not desire things of this world. Damn, it's like hella religious too now.
That's
Not
Romans 12:2.
yeah. What is it?
I think it's not be confirmed by the I know it in Spanish.
Say it in
By
Spanish. Subtitles right now.
Oh, hold on. All right, so Romans 12:2 or Romanos 12:2, it says, no conforméis a este siglo, sino transformados por medio de la renovación de nuestro entendimiento para que comprobéis cuál sea la buena voluntad de Dios, agradable y perfecta. Yeah, it's like be renovated by the don't be conformed to the world. Like don't feel like you have to please this world, but be transformed by the renovation of your mind, and just kind of being closer to yourself and closer to God. But yeah, don't you're not of this world. Don't worry about these things and these things pleasing you. So yeah, man, I feel like everything you were saying is 100% correct, and I started feeling that way once the pandemic happened, where I had to shut everything down. Where like all the shoes that I bought, I got these new KDs, I got these things, I got, you know what I mean? All that shit didn't matter. Where am I going to wear that to? You know? I got money in my retirement account, but I'm like, well, if I can't even touch that, or if I can't do this or that, what the fuck am I going to use that for? You know what I mean? And I feel like I was chasing things. I was chasing a lifestyle. I was chasing a goal. And it wasn't until I had to put all that on pause that I realized that I already had everything that I was trying to go for. I had family, I had health, I had, that's it, a shelter. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
And, um, and I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier about are you a free thinker or not? And you're not, or I'm not, if I'm easily influenced by what's going on because I'm chasing that lifestyle. I'm being told what I need to think, what I need to think. And it's not like until I decided to say, go and be within yourself and live and go through your experience of life and then find out who are you? What is it that matters to you?
And as we're talking about getting to like understand yourself and understanding the things that you truly believe in and stand behind and your own values and morals, I think it's one thing that I often hear people say or like try to influence people with is like focus. Like, oh, you just need to focus on the task, focus on the work, focus, you know, focus your energy, focus whatever, right? I think a lot of people use focus as a word um to motivate people, right? But I think this is my opinion on like focus is that a lot of people will tell you to focus but won't teach you how to focus. To me, I believe that like focus is a practice. Focus is like you don't like we're so influenced in this world by so many things that it's hard to focus, like everything is instant gratification in the society that we live in today. So it's hard to focus when like you have your phone, you have your TV, you have your laptop, you have so many things going on in the world. How do you even focus your energy to begin with when everybody's telling you all you need to do is focus? If you want to do this, you just got to focus. And the truth be told, like a lot of people aren't taught that. A lot of people aren't taught how to focus or what that even means. And so for me, like, the thing that I come back to when I talk about this is like, spend time with yourself, spend time with your thoughts. It's not going to be easy. Meditation isn't easy. And I'm not saying that meditation only comes in one form, but you need to be able to like relax your mind, relax your brain. Because at the end of the day, it's a muscle. And just like any muscle, when it comes to like fitness, you do the work to exhaust that muscle. To experience growth, you exhaust it. You work it out until you exhaust that muscle, and then you allow it to rest. And the growth comes in that rest time. So similar to as we were talking about like um, rest and meditation before, I think the brain works that way. The brain, I don't have the science behind it. Sure, actually could probably find it, but the brain is a muscle. So when you're inputting that information in, that's an exercise. You're exercising your brain. You're allowing it to intake new information. You're working it out. But at the end of the day, you have to allow it rest in order for it to truly grow, in order for you to truly grow with those thoughts. So I think focus is something that's just people say but don't teach. You have do you have something that works for you, Charlie?
You know what? It's something not necessarily that. How do I say it? I just kind of learn or have been learning how to focus. That's been my thing, and I do it just from reading hella books. And success leaves a footprint, right? And so I've been doing that by just seeing what other people have done, and mostly, I guess it came from discipline for me, right? It came from discipline for me because I was a very undisciplined person until I took some classes for um, with acting is where it started. I was part of the Meisner technique, and the Meisner technique requires a lot of discipline and focus on listening, really. And the discipline part of it was super intriguing to me, and they put me up on the game. I mean, on the book of How to Be a Highly Effective Person, or 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And so from there, it changed my paradigm. I'm like, oh, acting isn't just freaking hello. You know what I mean? Like, there's a technique and method to this thing, and great actors are freaking focused and dedicated on these things. From there, when I did the Fire Academy, that taught me actual discipline, dedication, hard work, and everything. Like, it put those things together. And then from reading successful stories of people, it got me to find out what the formula is to success, I guess, or to hard work. And I guess, sticking with your goal. And then that in turn taught me that you have to be focused on those goals. You have to kind of have the vision, the dedication, and then you have to remember to stick to that. Not just on the dedication of doing the work, but also why you're doing the work. And that's what creates my focus, is just knowing my why on what I'm doing and why I want to do it. But I don't really have a set technique. No one's really taught me how to focus yet. So that's the next thing to learn.
Last week we talked about our own kind of journeys, and once we did get started, we talked about the path that we took within our industries or within life, even, right? Because we both had certain things that we did before. Um, you know, um, in talking about our journeys after getting started, we didn't really, I guess, even though we talked about self-doubt and imposter syndrome, I guess we didn't end up talking too much about like how to literally get started. I know, for me, and we've talked about this, to me, I always tell people, like, if you want to do something, if you want to get started at something, just do it. Like, right, it's simple. Just get out of your head and just do it. But I know that's not always like the most helpful information, because different people, react to things differently. Uh, can you talk about your process of getting started and getting out of your own way?
Yeah, I'll take it back to when the first time I started my own business was I was 21, and I started a kind of a flower shop with this ex girlfriend of mine. And the way that that started was, prior to doing that, I was working at Texas Roadhouse, and I was the host. So I wasn't really doing too much. I was just kind of greeting people and doing all that. I quit that job and I started working for, those dudes that sell like Dare backpacks and shit in front of food mags.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, right? Because my girl at the time, she was like, "Oh, I want to do this. It's 100% commission, and you're kind of going door to door at times, but you're there and you're talking to people." And I sucked ass, bro. Like, I was horrible at it. I just couldn't feel right. You know what I mean? I knew that 5% goes to donations and the rest of the company keeps the rest of it. And it didn't sit right with me. But besides that, like, it was a tough ass job. It was just freaking going and getting rejected. It was constant rejection. There was times where I would go at the end of the day because I made no money. I would cry in the car and I'm like, why am I putting myself through this insane amount of rejection and just people just ignoring you? And so I decided, well, if I can't, because I started doing better. And then I was like, if I could put myself out there to be rejected for this company that I don't believe in, to sell a product that I don't believe in, and that the things that they're selling to people aren't actually going to what they say is going to go to people, then why don't I do it for myself? So then I said, all right, well, you've been rejected for others. Get rejected for what you believe in and for what you do. So then I used that same thing. We got flowers. We sold flowers on Valentine's Day. Instead of celebrating Valentine's Day, we sold flowers on Valentine's Day. Made enough money to get to buy a trip for Disneyland for a weekend. And I was like, whoa, this shit was crazy. Like, I've never made that much money that quickly. So then I was like, well, let's just make a business. And then I asked people about it. And like, oh, you got to get a business license. You got to do this. You got to do that. And I felt so defeated at that point. Like, I don't have a license for this. I never went to school for business or anything. So I just fucking went to City Hall and I asked, and I was like, all right, well, how do I get a business license? And they were like, oh, you just pay $20 or $80 at that. I can't remember how much it was at that time. And I was like, that's it. And it was like, that's it. And that was the way that I started. I just realized it was that easy to just get started. And then from that permit, you just do the next permit and the next permit. But what that taught me was basically just kind of go, and that you might not know what you're going to get into, but you just do it. And since then, when I've started other ventures in life, when I get overwhelmed by what it is, I remind myself of, yo, it's really not that hard. You just kind of have to start taking the first step to do it. And if you're willing to get rejected by other people, for other people, get rejected for yourself and what you want to do. And I think back on those moments because now I still get overwhelmed. I still feel like we talked about the imposter syndrome and about just taking too much and how are people going to look at you. And then what I just go back to is just, what's step one? So for those people where you think that the just effing go is not helpful enough, then ask yourself, okay, what's step one? My wife tells me that all the time. All right, what's the first step you got to do? Okay, well, I guess I got to go online and Google where to get this material, or I got to go and find out, is this thing already out there? Or not even, just, I don't know, whatever example you want, but take the very first step. If that's just going to City Hall and seeing, is this possible to do? Or just Googling this and Amazon and seeing if there's products that you can sell or whatever. I don't know what you want to do, man. If it's barber school, sign up for barber school. What is the first day of barber school? You know what I mean? How do you enroll? Boom, that's the first step. And then you take the next step. What is it, Will Smith, that says that you can't build a wall by building a wall? You have to do one brick at a time. Just put one brick in, and it gets even better. If you want to work out, do one push-up, and then do two, and then do three, you know? So that's it, man. It's really difficult because of your brain's barrier that you put on yourself, your ego, your pride, and your self-defeatingness. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. You are the most difficult part of it. You believing in yourself that you can do it, it is the most difficult part. So just start by believing in yourself, saying, I'm going to at least try this until I fail. And then you go. And then when you fail, you keep going.
No, I something I always come back to is like the most important step in any journey is the first step. Yeah. And I think we have this I guess we have an ongoing joke every time we like look at like how many people have listened or downloaded the podcast, right? It's like halfway to 1 million, right? Like it can't get to 1 million unless you can get to one. You can't get to 1 million unless you get to 100, right? So everything at the end of the day, everything is just another step. But you can't take those steps until you take the first one. And I think for me, like an important aspect of getting started is auditing what you have around you, who you have around you, the environments you're in, and taking a real hard look at it and saying, can I push myself or can I thrive in this environment or around these people? And I'm not saying that you have to completely change up your like circle, but I think you have to take a hard look at the people around you and say, am I stuck in a situation where everybody around me is stagnant? Because if you are, I forget who says the quote, but it's like, if you hang around, it's something like if you hang around 5 smart people, then you're going to be the 6 or whatever, right? If you hang around, 5 lazy people, then you're going to be the 6th lazy person, right? So you are the people that you surround yourselves with. And so to me, an important aspect of getting started is really auditing, the energy that you keep around you, and looking at it and being like, can I be inspired by this person? Can I be inspired in this house, at this school, right? Not to say that it's always about external things. At the end of the day, you have to be accountable and you have to do it yourself. But, if you want, like, it's like a cheat code, surround yourself by motivated people. And when you're in that energy, when you're around other motivated people, it's only a matter of time before you really pick it up and you're like, all right, this is how it happened. I didn't know how people did it before, but I'm around, these 3 people that are constantly going and constantly motivated and constantly positive, and I'm watching them and I see it. I get it now. It's going to click at some point, right? At the end of the day, there's no real cheat code. In order to get anything you want in this life, you got to work for it somehow, and that's not saying material things. That's in general. If you want peace within yourself, you got to work for it. It's something you do. If you want to be in physically good shape, if you want to be able to run a mile, you got to work at it. I always say, like, you don't get better at shooting free throws by not shooting free throws. If you want to get better at shooting free throws, you got to go out and do it. You can read a book on it, you can watch people do it all day, but at the end of the day, if you don't do it, you ain't gonna be good at it. So, there's no true cheat codes, but I think that's an important one that I found, is just surrounding yourself by the right people, the people that are constantly going and constantly motivated and seeing the way they do it and pulling from that.
Absolutely right, man. I completely 100% agree with you on that. And one thing to add to that, for example, my best friend Suj, he's a music video producer now. He used to be a director, and him and I always talk to each other about that, right? And we're always like, you gotta surround yourself with the right crew. You gotta do this, and we don't see each other as often, but we talk regularly. However, there are times that we don't talk. There's times that we're like, hey, I'm on a different page right now, brother. Like, I'm going this way, you're heading this way. We have an issue between ourselves. He likes to procrastinate, and I like to talk. And so sometimes he'll use me to fuel his procrastination, and I'll use his ear to fuel my talkativeness, right? Until, like, even the other day, we had a recent we were talking about like the situation that's happening, whether EDD, PPP, all that other stuff, right? And sometimes we bump heads, and I realize, yo, if we're not helping each other, if I'm wasting my time talking and you're just procrastinating, then we can't. Right now, we're gonna have to call this communication quit. You know what I mean? Because we're not benefiting from each other, and I'm either dragging you down or you're dragging me down. And it's not a. I think that you have to surround yourself with people that you are going to succeed with, or that are going towards the goals that you want. And I think you do have to, remove yourself from people who are going down a different path. But that doesn't mean that you cut those people off for the rest of your life. When you have other people that are like-minded, that recognize that power, that dynamic of who you're surrounding yourself with, you can say, hey, you know what? We are on different pages right now. I'm going to get back to you in a minute, or we're going to have to limit some of our conversation because I love you as a friend. I love you dearly, but I'm going to focus on this right now. And we've been able to get that relationship together to say, all right, dog, I'm going to go real quick, and we'll touch base again once we've hit that goal that we've accomplished, and then we go back. And so that's been a very helpful thing for me and his friendship, because then it kind of becomes a competition of, are you holding yourself accountable? You know what I mean? And we check back in on each other with like, yo, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. We're like solid, this and that. And we support each other. What we don't want to do is bring each other down. And sometimes that means that we need to let each other down to be able to support each other. Like, I need to not talk to you because I'm wasting your time right now. So go ahead and do your thing.
That's beautiful.
Thank
I
you,
never
man.
really thought about it like that, but that's beautiful because like I have like really 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 good friends that I won't talk to for months. Mikey's that way. Like before we started doing the podcast every week, like Mikey's one of my best friends. Um, but even before we started doing the podcast stuff together, there would be times where we won't talk for a couple months. Uh, but we'll always like check in with each other, make sure each other are doing well, make sure each other like prospering and like on the right path. And when you do end up linking back up, or there's no, like, you don't have a bruised ego about it. Like, you're out there doing what you got to do. We're all like adults at this point. You're out there doing what you got to do, doing the best for yourself, making the most out of your situation. And then you come back and you pick it up where right where it left off, like with that love. So like I do enjoy hearing that. Because I think it is a reality of a lot of situations. Sometimes you got to take a break from people to get the most out of yourself. I was talking about this with my homie yesterday, my homie Terrence. We were talking about, it's like the old saying, absence makes a heart grow fonder, right? So even with people, like I think in society currently, especially within the big cities, like we're all stacked on top of each other. And so like we live in such close proximity with people that you're bound to come across multiple different energies a day, multiple different people. And when you do that, like you put yourself in a situation where you're influenced by other people's energy, right? But when you remove yourself from that situation for a time being and you're more at peace with yourself, you can come back and appreciate that interaction more because you removed yourself from it. Meanwhile, like, and it happens with relationships, right? With when you're with somebody every day, it's easy to take that for granted. And then when you remove yourself from it, you come back to it and you're like, yeah, like I miss this. This is a piece for me. And, that's, that is, I like it. It's beautiful.
Thank you, brother. It took work. It wasn't always like that. There was definitely times where we're just like, the first few times when we were younger, we didn't talk for like 9 months or so. And then there was really no apology when we first got back. When we first linked up, it was more like we know what happened, and then we just started becoming vulnerable with ourselves. To be honest, there was a time, I mean, growing up, you clown on each other, right? You roast each other, and sometimes you start going a little too hard. And he actually brought it to my attention where he was like, he said a couple of things at first, like, one, that whole thing with friends like you, who needs enemies, right? Just because verbally I can be a little aggressive sometimes. And And I realize that I treat people that are super close to me the way that I treat myself, and sometimes I'm a big ass bully to myself, and I feel like if I love you and I start treating you that way, it's because I want you to go up, and that's not necessarily how people react well to shit, right? People don't like that, and I taught myself to kind of start caring for myself. But he brought that to my attention a couple of times, and then he also made me realize that yo, we're friends, like we are friends, we should be lifting each other up the whole time instead of constantly jabbing each other, whether it's for motivation or not. Like it doesn't matter. Like I could find a different way to motivate you without kind of harping on you. And
Yeah.
so it's taken years since we met senior year of high school actually. Um, so we're just you know we're friends. He's my brother.
Yeah.
So
No, I believe it, man, because I think that's just a coming of age thing too, man. I think it's a coming of age where like when you're young and from certain environments, you deal with like your trauma or your pain sometimes just by like roasting others or by like, not necessarily purposefully putting people down, but just when you're in it, you're just like, you roast people to roast people, and that's just a part of like the bonding experience, I guess, at a young age. But then at some point, I think you just kind of have to go past it and like uplift all the people that you really care about around you. And I think that's very much like a coming of age thing. But I think it's the most important aspect of it is just like maintaining those healthy relationships, being able to take a look at like the things that you do wrong, the things that may not enjoy from other people, and like expressing those things, feeling like you can freely express that. You don't have to shut yourself down, but you can also openly communicate with other people about like how they want to be treated and you know uh, how you interact within a relationship. It's funny, we're kind of getting away from the like initial topic of like getting started, but I think that's it all plays into it, just like the people you keep around you and how you treat those people, how they treat you, the energy you find to build off of, and what's beneficial for you and what's not. And I've come to a realization in like the past little while that outside of there's a few true evils, I think, in this world, right? And I think that's the case with people. Even there's only a small amount of people that I would consider like, all right, that's truly like a person that you know, whether it's chemical imbalance or whatever, that like has evil in their heart. And then the rest of it is just perspective. It's just perspective. Somebody may wrong you, and you may feel like very slighted by that. But at the end of the day, they may view it as like they were right in that situation. And so, like, I think it's important to look at perspective and, like, all right, like this person, I may not feel like this person is a quote unquote good person, but that just means that's not the right person for me to surround myself with. They may be the right person for other people to surround themselves with, but for me, that's not me. It's not the energy that I need to be around, and I can accept that as what it is.
yeah, I think that's a pretty solid answer on. And it's funny because I feel like you were saying, we didn't know where that topic was going to be and how to get started. But I think honestly, that's the truth. Is how is your state of mind and how's your circle? You know what I mean? Before you even get started, let's like check yourself, your circle, and what you want to do. So
The most important thing for people to remember is at the end of the day, we're all accountable for the decisions we make, and we all, have to do the things that are at the day best for us and best for the people that we care about the most. And so, the most important thing for me to express to people in terms of like how to get started on your own journey is just don't look at it as like just for yourself. Look at the people around you and say, you know what, I finally got to get out of my own way to step into my own greatness. And I think that once you realize that, you know, the sky's the limit for anybody, then you're only limited by your own brain power. So, for anybody out there that is struggling or, curious and how to do anything, whether it's starting a podcast or getting super buff or saving a lot of money or, getting into a new career, the most important step is the first step. So audit the people you're around, audit your situations, be cognizant and aware of like the information you take in and your own peace and what you're able to get done, and move forward with the purest intentions and what you want to do. Because at the end of the day, you only have that one life to live, and don't want to look back on it with major regrets of what you could have, should have, would have done. Charlie, anything to add to that?
Nah, man, that's summed it all up. Thank you. But yep, that's it.
All right, y'all. Don't forget this week, just click subscribe, follow the podcast on Instagram at Just F and Go Podcast on Instagram. We're on all platforms, all major platforms, at least Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Tune in, and we will see y'all next week, y'all.